Good evening. Tonight we delve into a subject that stands at the intersection of breathtaking scientific advancement and profound ethical deliberation. Should parents be empowered to select their child's sex or traits using genetics? This is a question that compels us to consider not only the potential for alleviating human suffering, but also the inherent risks and complex moral quandaries that accompany such powerful capabilities. We will explore the arguments for and against, navigating the delicate balance between progress and precaution, autonomy and societal impact. To guide us through this intricate debate, we are privileged to have two distinguished guests. Dr. Kenji Tanaka, a renowned geneticist, will argue in favor of regulated genetic selection. And Ms. Sarah Chen, a sociologist and ethicist, will present the case against. Welcome to you both.
Thank you, Dr. Hayes. I acknowledge the profound sensitivity surrounding genetic selection. It touches upon our deepest values concerning family, humanity, and the future. However, it is imperative to frame this discussion accurately. My primary advocacy is for the therapeutic application of genetic technologies, specifically their power to prevent debilitating, often fatal, genetic diseases like Huntington's, Tay-Sachs, or cystic fibrosis. Imagine the relief for parents who know they carry a gene for such a condition, to have the option to ensure their child does not inherit a life sentence of suffering. This is not about crafting, quote, designer babies to arbitrary aesthetic standards. It is about alleviating profound human suffering and offering hope where currently there is often only despair. We already accept parental autonomy in many aspects of reproduction, including pre-implantation genetic diagnosis, PGD, for serious medical conditions. Extending this principle under a meticulously crafted and rigorously enforced regulatory framework is a logical and compassionate progression. A blanket prohibition on these technologies would be a disservice, stifling scientific advancement that holds the promise of eradicating some of humanity's most cruel afflictions. It would condemn future generations to preventable suffering. Now, the specter of enhancement inevitably arises. I approach this with extreme caution. Yet, if we could confer, for instance, enhanced immunity to pervasive diseases, should that be dismissed out of hand if proven safe and effective? This is fundamentally different from selecting for cosmetic traits or non-medical attributes, which would indeed require a far more stringent, if not prohibitive, ethical scrutiny. The line must be drawn, and it must be drawn with clarity and societal consensus. What is paramount is the establishment of robust ethical guidelines, transparent public discourse, and independent regulatory bodies. These mechanisms are essential to navigate the complexities and prevent misuse, ensuring that progress serves humanity responsibly, rather than resorting to an outright ban that forsakes immense potential for good. To deny the potential for alleviating suffering based on speculative fears, rather than engaging with how to manage those fears through careful governance, would be a profound mistake.
Thank you, Dr. Hayes. While Dr. Tanaka paints a picture of benevolent therapeutic application, I believe we must confront the profound ethical perils that lie beneath the surface of genetic selection technologies. The very concept, however well-intentioned its initial framing, steers us perilously close to the, quote, designer baby narrative and the commodification of children. It risks transforming offspring from gifts to be cherished into products, to be engineered and perfected according to parental or societal whims. One of my gravest concerns is the inevitable exacerbation of social inequalities. These technologies, by their very nature, will initially be expensive and accessible only to the affluent. This creates the terrifying prospect of a genetic divide, a biological stratification of society, where the wealthy can purchase genetic advantages for their children, while others cannot. This isn't merely science fiction. It's a tangible risk that could deepen existing societal fissures in ways we can barely comprehend, creating a, quote, genobility versus a genopoor. Furthermore, we must acknowledge the hubris in assuming we can safely manipulate the human gene pool. our understanding of complex genetic interactions is still nascent. Altering genes, even with the best intentions, could have unforeseen and potentially devastating long-term consequences for individuals and for the human species as a whole. The intricate tapestry of our genome has evolved over millennia. To begin pulling at its threads without fully understanding the pattern is an act of profound irresponsibility. Moreover, the push for genetic selection has deeply troubling implications for disability rights and our societal acceptance of human variation. The very act of selecting against certain traits implicitly devalues individuals who possess those traits naturally. It sends a chilling message that some lives, some variations of human existence, are less desirable, less worthy. This undermines decades of progress in fostering a society that embraces diversity and supports people with disabilities. Do we want a world that strives to eliminate difference rather than accommodate and celebrate it? And finally, Dr. Tanaka touches upon enhancement. But who defines enhancement? Who decides which traits are better or more advantageous? Are these decisions to be driven by market forces, by prevailing social biases, or by a narrow definition of human perfection? The pursuit of genetic perfection is a dangerous illusion, one that could lead us down a path where we lose sight of what truly makes us human: our diversity, our imperfections, and our shared vulnerability.
Dr. Tanaka, you've articulated a clear distinction between therapeutic applications aimed at preventing severe diseases and the more contentious area of genetic enhancement. Ms. Chen, you've expressed skepticism that such a line can definitively hold in practice. How do we effectively navigate this so-called slippery slope argument, which posits that allowing therapeutic uses will inevitably lead to non-medical enhancements? Dr. Tanaka, what specific, robust safeguards could be implemented to prevent therapeutic ambitions from morphing into a widespread pursuit of non-medical enhancements?
The distinction, Dr. Hayes, is not merely semantic. It is foundational and can be upheld through meticulous, legally binding regulations. The primary safeguard lies in establishing independent, multidisciplinary medical review boards. These boards, comprising geneticists, medical experts, ethicists, legal scholars, and public representatives, would rigorously assess each proposed application based on clearly defined criteria for severe genetic condition. The focus must remain unequivocally on preventing conditions that cause significant suffering, disability, or premature death. For instance, eliminating the gene responsible for a fatal neurodegenerative disorder in childhood is unambiguously therapeutic. The debate surrounding, quote, enhancement for traits like intelligence, athletic prowess, or cosmetic features is indeed far more complex, and I must stress, is not what we are primarily advocating for widespread adoption at this juncture. Our immediate focus is medical necessity and the alleviation of suffering, governed by stringent oversight. Furthermore, legislation could explicitly prohibit non-therapeutic genetic modifications, with severe penalties for violations, thus creating a strong deterrent against misuse.
While the idea of clear lines and robust review boards sounds reassuring in theory, Dr. Tanaka, historical precedent with other medical technologies suggests a persistent tendency towards indication creep, or the medicalization, of normal human traits. What often begins as a targeted therapy for severe conditions can gradually, almost imperceptibly, expand its scope of application. For instance, consider how short stature, once accepted as a normal human variation, is now sometimes medically treated with growth hormone, even in the absence of a pathological deficiency. If we permit genetic selection for serious disease prevention, the societal and commercial pressures to select for traits perceived as advantageous, perhaps higher cognitive function, specific physical attributes, or even mood predispositions will become immense. This could subtly yet profoundly shift our collective perception of what constitutes normal or healthy, thereby devaluing natural human variation and creating new anxieties around genetic optimization. The slippery slope isn't just a hypothetical fallacy. It's a documented pattern in the adoption of powerful new technologies, especially when strong market forces and individual desires for the best for one's children are in play.
So the crux of the issue appears to be not solely the technological capability itself, but the powerful societal values and market dynamics that might inevitably drive its application beyond strictly defined medical necessities. It raises the question of whether any regulatory framework, however well-intentioned, can truly withstand these pressures in the long term. Let's assume, hypothetically, that genetic selection technologies become more established and refined for certain applications. A critical concern, Ms. Chen, which you forcefully highlighted in your opening statement, is the issue of equitable access. How do we realistically address the profound concerns about creating or exacerbating a genetic schism within society, where access to these potentially life-altering technologies is dictated by wealth?
The risk of creating a genetic aristocracy is, in my view, one of the most formidable and perhaps intractable challenges. If these advanced genetic selection technologies carry a significant cost, as they invariably will, at least initially and likely for a considerable time, they will inevitably be accessible primarily, if not exclusively, to the wealthy. This leads directly to a deeply disturbing scenario where affluent children are born with engineered genetic advantages, not just freedom from certain diseases, but potentially traits that are highly valued in our competitive society, further entrenching existing social and economic stratification. This isn't merely about preventing illness. It could extend to cognitive abilities, physical resilience, or other characteristics that confer an advantage in education, the job market, and society at large. We could be paving the way for a biologically underpinned class system, a genetocracy. Achieving genuine equity and access seems an almost insurmountable hurdle within a predominantly market-driven healthcare system and a globalized economy where such services could be sought out by those with the means, regardless of national regulations. The promise of fairness can easily become an empty one.
I fully acknowledge the gravity of the equity concern, Ms. Chen. It is an issue that must be at the forefront of any ethical consideration and policy development regarding genetic selection. It would be morally indefensible if these technologies became solely the preserve of the rich, exacerbating existing inequalities. One potential model to mitigate this, particularly for proven therapeutic uses aimed at preventing severe diseases, could involve integrating these services into public healthcare systems, similar to how vaccinations or other essential medical treatments are provided. This would require significant public investment and political will, but it's not an insurmountable challenge if society deems the benefits sufficiently important. Furthermore, international collaborations and ethical oversight bodies would need to actively work towards establishing global norms and mechanisms to ensure that the benefits of these technologies are shared as widely as possible, and that access is not solely determined by socioeconomic status or geography. This necessitates proactive, forward-thinking policymaking that runs in parallel with, not behind, technological development. We must also explore innovative funding models and patent regulations to prevent monopolistic pricing from hindering access.
So a public health paradigm for demonstrably effective and approved therapies could offer one avenue towards greater equity, at least at a national level. However, the challenge of global equity, and indeed the consistent universal definition of what constitutes an approved, to quote, an essential therapy, remains a significant hurdle. The potential for genetic tourism or disparities between nations could still undermine efforts for equitable access within a single country.
In conclusion, while the ethical landscape is undeniably complex, we must not lose sight of the profound potential inherent in genetic technologies to alleviate immense human suffering caused by debilitating hereditary diseases. This, I maintain, is their primary and most ethically justifiable application. A path forward necessitates not outright prohibition, which would cruelly deny relief to countless individuals and families, but rather a commitment to careful, meticulously regulated advancement, we must proceed with courage tempered by caution. I call for sustained and inclusive public dialogue, the establishment of robust, independent, ethical oversight, and an unwavering commitment to ensuring that the benefits of these transformative technologies are applied responsibly and, wherever feasible, equitably. Our focus should remain steadfastly on the clear, demonstrable medical good these advancements can achieve for humanity.
To conclude, while the promise of disease eradication is alluring, we must not be blinded to the significant and potentially irreversible ethical and societal risks that accompany genetic selection. These include the commodification of human life, the dangerous exacerbation of social and economic inequality, and the profound hubris of tampering with the human gene pool without a complete understanding of the long-term consequences. I urge us to reaffirm the intrinsic value of human diversity in all its forms and to champion the importance of accepting and supporting individuals with all their natural variations, including those with disabilities. Our humanity is enriched by difference, not diminished by it. Let us proceed with utmost caution, prioritizing societal solutions to existing health and social problems, rather than rushing headlong into potentially divisive and ethically fraught technological interventions that could fundamentally, and perhaps detrimentally, alter our shared human experience and identity.
Thank you, Dr. Tanaka, and thank you, Ms. Chen, for your exceptionally insightful and thought-provoking contributions to this evening's vital discussion. You have both articulated your positions with clarity and conviction, illuminating the multifaceted nature of this complex issue. We have explored the core tension, the remarkable promise of genetic technologies to alleviate suffering and prevent disease, set against the profound ethical dilemmas and significant societal risks associated with selecting human traits. These include concerns about the definition of therapy versus enhancement, equitable access, the potential for new forms of discrimination, and the very essence of what it means to be human in an age of unprecedented technological capability. The questions raised tonight do not have easy answers. They demand our ongoing attention, critical reflection, and broad societal engagement. As we move forward, the conversation about humanity's future and our collective genetic heritage is undeniably one that involves, and indeed, obligates us all.